Well, to bring jobs into the area is not the job of the federal government because the Constitution does not allow for the federal government to tax other states to bring jobs into different states. But what we can do is we can make it so that the taxes are easier. We can make sure that we don't have the burdensome regulations that are happening right now on business. What happened with the health care reform bill was that they put in it that businesses have to have a 1099 form. And that means that every $600 that they do transactions with another company in a year has to be reported to the federal government. So many businesses are just strictly going to go to the 600 mark and then they're going to stop buying anything more. So if we get rid of that, that would help people to buy more because they're just going to say, well, I'm at my 600, I'm not going to buy any more machinery or any more bottled water or paper or whatever else that they may want to do in a situation like that. Also, with the regulations that are put on business, they have to also spend $7,000 to $10,000 a year per employee, and that's just for regulation. And you just think of how many jobs could be created with that. You know, if you need 3 workers, you can't have them because it costs you $10,000 for the workers that you already have. So if the federal government stays out of the small businesses and even the large businesses, just stay out of it and leave it to the states because the states know what's best for their own state. Education funding is a state issue as well. I think that the federal government, once we got the Department of Education, we saw that they micromanaged the schools in every state. But every state knows what's best for their own children, and the parents know what's best for their own children. So to have a bureaucrat back in Washington deciding what's best for this school is wrong. So I would suggest perhaps that instead of the states paying the first tax to the federal government and then getting money back for the schools, they would perhaps just not send that money in the first place. So if a state's going to get a certain amount of money, then what they would say is that, okay, well, we're just not going to send that amount to the federal government. And then we would leave that to the parents and the teachers and the community as to what's best for their children. And we put mandates on the states, the No Child Left Behind. The federal government had no authority, according to Article 1, Section 8, to do anything about that at all. And so if we just stop micromanaging and having bureaucrats decide what's best for the kids in this area, then I think that we would have the ability to have a better education. With the No Child Left Behind, a lot of times the pressure is to teach to the tests. And that's really hard to do because you have to leave out a lot of different information. That would be helpful for college entrants and being able to just go ahead and live your own life and not have to report to a bureaucrat.
What motivates you to run, and what do you want to achieve while in office?
Well, I'm running because I'm really tired of the people there not listening to us. We tell them what we want or we tell them what we don't want, and they just do it anyway. They're not following the Constitution, and if we don't follow the Constitution, then no law that we do can be really acceptable, because then you say, well, we'll follow this one, but we won't follow that one. When I'm there, I would like to follow the Constitution as it is written in its original intent, written by the founders, and the meanings of the words that they had in mind. You know, they wrote that the Commerce Clause, which a lot of times we see that that's used for the federal government to get involved in everything, not just what it's supposed to do. But when the founders wrote to regulate commerce between the states, they didn't mean to control, and that's what today's Congress seems to think it means, control, but really it meant to make regular, because they didn't want one state refusing or excessively taxing another state's goods. They wanted it to be freely able to go back and forth between the states. And so that's what I mean when I say to interpret it in the original intent. words often have a different meaning. I mean, I don't think that when the founders heard the word cool, they thought that that was something positive and nice, but that it meant something cool. So we have to always follow the original intent, and I want to literally follow the amendments. We had the Supreme Court decision that said that things for public good could be taken by government. So your private property could be taken from you by the government and sold to another private person because they say that it means for the public good. But what the Constitution says is for public use. So they're not using the words correctly, and that's something that I really want to see happening in the Congress, because they're not following the law. With NAFTA and CAFTA, those were treaties, and the House of Representatives is not allowed to even discuss treaties. That's strictly with the Senate. So they called it an agreement, but it's really a treaty. And Abraham Lincoln is attributed to say, if you have a dog and you call a tail a leg, how many legs does the dog have? Well, the dog still has 4 legs. You can call a tail a leg, but it's not a leg. And that's how they do things with treaties and how they violate the Constitution quite frequently. So I would strictly follow the Constitution. Well, the reason that I'm running, I mentioned a little bit before, but I'm a descendant of a signer of the Declaration of Independence and of people that fought in the Revolutionary War. And they had in mind a country that is so different than what we have today. And we see things changing so much that it's frightening to a lot of people, and to me sometimes too, because we have gotten out of control spending, we're violating the Constitution, and we're spending our children into servitude. And I just find that immoral, and I think that it needs to stop. They just can't stop in the Congress. We tell them we need to save our money, we need to cut expenses and cut spending, and they don't do it. And so I want to go and at least be a voice for that. I'm also a pro-life candidate, and I think that a lot of times we're skirting the issue of abortion, and we need to remember that all people are worthy of life. We had slavery once before, and it was a terrible thing, and we said that we could own other human beings, and we thought that we were done with that as a country. But now we can say that we can own a child if the child is not born yet, and that it's only a person if the mother wants it, not just the father and the mother, but only the mother. And we need to deal with that because we have the right to life from conception to natural death. In Oregon, there's physician-assisted suicide, and the federal government can be involved in that because a state can't decide that they can kill their own citizens just because they voted for it. So I know that there's a lot of economic issues and trade issues and wars coming up and just interesting things that you could say that we live in interesting times. But I think that we have to think of the moral issues as well, because that's what knits a community together. It knits a family together, it knits a culture together. And I'm just afraid that our culture has become too self-indulgent, and we need to think of the greater good, and that is that we consider all people worthy of being here, and that we want the best for all people. And that doesn't mean being a babysitter or being a nanny, but really considering what's best for people. And the Congress has the ability to encourage that. Obviously not control it, but I would just hope that we would not only think of economic issues, but we would also think of issues that were moral like that. So that's about it.